Today we're continuing the discussion, part 2 of health.
Let's go.
We love talking about health stuff.
It's important. It's kind of important.
Is it just kind of?
Lots important.
Maybe the most important?
Oh, yeah.
Because everything, I mean, we might have touched on this in the previous one, but yeah, if you don't have health, then nothing else.
Life is kind of important.
Yeah, because you can say, oh, the relationship's important, lifestyle, connections, all that stuff. But without health, I don't think you're thinking too much about those things.
No.
So today we wanted to talk and move into the discussion and maybe illuminate for people who have maybe heard when people talk about macros, macro and micronutrients.
Yeah.
What are macros? Because
low carb diets, high carb diets, low fat diets, high fat diets, protein diets, vegan diets, carnivore diets. It's all happening.
No, like fasting diets.
No food diets.
Yes, Tash has tried the ring of them all. Possibly not all of them. Don't think you've ever tried the carnivore diet.
I couldn't do that one.
But today we wanted to discuss a little bit about what is a macro. What are macros?
Just hopefully help you guys out with the maze that is health and nutrition.
Which is health and nutrition and food, and there's so much more to the journey than we know as well.
Yeah,
like
we're
going
not
into like
anything.
the biochemistry part of foods and stuff like that. But
can I just add to that? I remember a book that we were reading about a nephrologist who then became a dietary specialist because he was sick of helping people with type 2 diabetes with their kidneys. And so he wanted to get it before they got type 2 diabetes. And doctor his whole life, is dedicating his entire existence to understanding digestion and nutrition and how we process food. Says he's like 70% of the knowledge.
Or still lacks, like we didn't know 70%.
Oh, I thought he knew 70%.
You just said there's so much unknown still.
So that's him. So our piece of the pie is like tiny 1,000,001.1% of knowledge. But we're also aware that the knowledge that you and I have, we've probably read over 50 books. I actually have a degree in nutrition. We
live for health as well.
We invest in really big trainers who tell us what they're learning, and it's just something we do really invest in and research and spend energy on. And people don't even know this 0.01% that we know.
No.
And knowledge is power. It's really easy to make different dietary decisions based on knowing. But a lot of people, I think everyone knows like McDonald's is bad, but they don't really know why it's bad. So they're like, oh, it can't be that bad, and I'll go eat it.
Yeah.
But they'll beat themselves up for eating an egg yolk. And it's like, whoa, like some people will think an egg yolk or a McDonald's burger is kind of the same badness. So we just want to help with some things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we wanted to basically empower you, just give you a little bit of some of the stuff that we've learnt. So today we want to talk about what are macros.
Yes,
amongst
people
things.
get scared. Like
that's
a bodybuilder term.
Yeah, I've got to go measure my macros,
Yeah.
which I do measure my macros, but I don't even talk in macros. But basically, all food, everything that you put into your body of food that you'll eat, is only comprised of 3 things, 3 macros.
Well, 3 macronutrients. So macros is a shortened version because I don't know if it's an Australian thing because Australians shorten everything, but we don't want to say macronutrients, so we say macros.
So it's obviously the large ones because on the other flip side, there are micronutrients.
Yeah, so macro big, micro little.
Yep.
Easy. We're good to go.
Macro, we're going to talk about, there's
Only
3 of them.
3.
There's protein, there's fat, and there's carbohydrates.
And can I just say, well, actually, only 2 out of the 3 are essential for life, which is fat and protein. But all 3 are not good or bad. Like, it's so in today's day and age, if you just say there's fat, there's protein, there's carbohydrate, most people either go, if you're older generation, fats are bad. And if you're the newer generation, carbohydrates are bad.
Yes.
None of them. Guess what? Like a projection of good or bad comes from a human. It's not actually like it wasn't born that way. Mr. Carbohydrate was not like, hey, I'm born bad. You're looking at
As
me
in the
like
macronutrient carbohydrate.
Yeah, it's like saying snakes are bad. It's like snakes are not good or bad. They're just snakes.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates are not good or bad. They're just carbohydrates.
It just is.
Yes.
So we've got these 3 macronutrients, and when you think about every single food that we're putting into our body is either a combination of the 3.
Yes.
Predominantly one or the other. And there is nothing else.
There's no labels.
There is nothing else that comprises of these foods besides maybe processed food. And processed is basically unnatural food? What have we done to it from its most natural source? So, and that's when we have other things. When we look on the side of the packet and we're like, how do I pronounce this name? What is an e-chemical? What are all these other things?
Yeah, so e-chemical is not a macronutrient.
No, but pretty much everything else is one of these three. So for an example, let's talk about a steak, for example, piece of meat.
Well, I was going to talk about the 3 macros.
Okay, let's go.
Yeah, so let's go with our first one, protein.
Yes.
So protein, why is having protein important?
Yep.
And it's obviously I think most people go, oh, hair and nails. Yeah, hair and nails, important, especially me, very important. But also everything in your body is muscle. Like your heart is a muscle. Your does your brain? Brain doesn't. Probably that's the only organ that doesn't need as much
Basically,
protein.
protein is, if you break it down a little bit further, when it gets broken down, it's amino acids, which are basically, they're the building block of everything the body will then take and assemble to build your body, to repair, to grow.
And considering our body breaks down, sometimes every 2 days, sometimes every 7 years, but all parts of our body are continually breaking and regenerating. We need protein. You actually won't survive without it.
Yes, protein is very, very
like
important.
if I gave you fat and carbohydrate for the rest of your life, you would die because you don't have protein.
Yeah, protein. Yep, because you need to build things,
And
you need to repair things.
As Phil said, when protein breaks down, there's amino acids. There's non-essential amino acids, meaning that I can maybe make some amino acids from the carbohydrate and the fat, but essential amino acids, scratch that. You don't make it from the carbohydrate and fat. You just make it from your body.
Your body will just take whatever other stuff you have in it and make them. I don't know
I'll
exactly
just say there's non-essential amino acids, which means your body can figure out how to make them, but essential amino acids, meaning if you don't get this from a protein source, from your food, you die.
Yeah.
It's just as simple as that.
And
so,
your body is fascinating, and it can make these things that you need. Like we'll talk about it more later, but I don't want to forget this point. But how much did cholesterol get a bad rap? It goes back into studies well back into the past, but we can't have that. It's got cholesterol. We can't have that has cholesterol. You know that every single cell in your body, every single one, there's a lot of cells in our body, but every single one contains cholesterol. And
it contains a cell wall.
Yes.
And every single cell wall has cholesterol in it.
Yeah, and the fact is, if you're actually not getting enough cholesterol in your body makes it. It needs to make it. So didn't want to forget that point. But back on to
I think we've done protein. So protein, essential, got to have it, die. If you don't have it, you'll die. Fats, as Phil said, essential. So if I, again, lock you in a room and only feed you carbohydrates and protein, and I somehow distilled the protein so it had no fat in it, you die! Your body would, keep making its cholesterol until it couldn't anymore, and then your cells don't have cell walls. Also, hormones. Hormones are kind of important. They drive a lot of stuff going on in that body. Hormones, building blocks, cholesterol and fat.
Yeah, and actually the little fat cells are transporters around the body too.
Yeah.
They're so important. It is such an important thing in the body. So
everything that mainstream media has taught you, or anything that you learnt in year 10 science class, you need to put that away and really, and don't take our word for it, go do your own research, but understand there's only 3 things in food, and I must get a certain amount of protein into my body or I will die. I must get a certain amount of fat into my body or I will die. And then we've got the last one, carbohydrates.
Carbohydrates, possibly Tash's favourite.
I have a high macro count of carbohydrates, and I'm totally cool with that.
Yes. And what is essentially carbohydrates, Tash? When people think, okay, carbohydrates, well, what is it?
So carbohydrate is the only one that's not essential for life, but it is essential for energy.
Yes.
Not essential. Okay, so there's 2 ways our body can make enough energy for us to move our hands and walk and get through our day. And our body created 2 different ways in case we ran out of food in one of them.
Yep.
Well, he didn't make the body that great, because eventually if we don't get protein and fats, we die. But they did their best with what they had at the time. So our body's preferred fuel to run around and to do things is carbohydrate.
Yes, it's the one that's easily accessible. I heard a really good example one stage about like using carbohydrate as energy or fat as energy and stuff like that. And it was like, think of having your wallet in your pocket and you got cash sitting there. So easy to spend that cash, isn't that? And that's what they said. That's
it's right there.
It's there. Like I'm at the shops. Like, here it is. Here's some cash, and that's think of that as your carbohydrate, as an energy source there. But if you wanted to use fat as an energy source, think of that as it's in your bank account. Okay, I've now got to...
And there's no internet, so you have to go to the bank.
Got to go to the bank. I've got to maybe do a transfer or withdraw it to put it into the, to
then have it into the wallet.
Yes, to then use. So that was the difference on how the body likes to use a carbohydrate energy versus a fat energy.
Yeah. So in the absence of carbohydrate, which is all these low carb diets, let's get into ketosis, if you've ever heard of that word. Fasting, get into ketosis. Ketosis is when you burn fat 24 hours a day. Yes, 24 hours a day. If you have no carbohydrate, your body is like, I got to go to the bank, I got to go to the bank, I got to go to the bank. And that's when your bank is your fat stores, and that's when it's burning through your fat stores, and it's converting that fat into ketones, which is then used for energy in the body. But your body doesn't love that.
No.
It doesn't like, as Phil said, burning ketones.
It can get used to it. And Tash had the example, you got to go to the bank and think of that. That's almost like using energy. Okay, I've got to walk to the bank or go to get there.
Energy to get
this
there.
Is not as fun as, here's my wallet. Here's my wallet. I'm spending. So we've listed the 3 macronutrients.
Yes.
Let's maybe talk about sources of food that provide these macronutrients.
Yep. So what's your favourite protein source?
My favourite protein source is chicken, Tash.
You've really got 2 go-tos.
Yeah, well,
chicken, protein
meat is very high in protein.
But why you love chicken so much is it's mostly protein.
Yes.
So if you compare chicken to steak, they're both protein, or they both have protein in them, but chicken is much more protein with a little bit of fat. And is there any carbs? No. Whereas steak has protein, but then a lot higher percentage of fat grams as well.
Yeah.
So you're getting fat and protein with a steak, which is also good. Like, there's nothing wrong with steak. But if you're trying to match your macros, which we'll talk about in a second, it's just sometimes easier to go to the source.
Yes.
But we've also got, most dairy has protein in it.
Yes.
A lot of nuts have protein in them. Some vegetables have a little bit of protein in them. But normally when you're going for protein, it's dairy, nuts, and meat.
And meat, yes.
Oh, and eggs.
Yes.
Well, that's dairy. Is egg a dairy?
Well, dairy would be cows, wouldn't it?
I thought it's anything that comes from an animal is dairy.
Because
is goat milk dairy?
I'd still say that's just called goat milk.
Can someone please let us know in the comments? I would love to know what the definition of dairy is.
I associate dairy with cows.
I associate it with anything that comes out of an animal, which is egg comes out.
Well, isn't this interesting on the health discussion?
Let us know.
Interesting.
Anyway, animal products. Let's just go with animal products. Tends to be high in meat. And then if we're a vegetarian, we've got a little bit of veggies, definitely nuts and legumes. But you'll probably be trying to supplement with some kind of protein powder.
Yes.
All right. Then fats. So pure fat is normally, your oils. And then you've got foods that have fat and some other stuff in them, like avocados, eggs.
Nuts have a source of fat.
Yes, yeah.
And
like
when
hybrid.
it comes to fats, there is actually a discussion where people talk about good fats and bad fats. Yes,
let's talk about that now.
Because good fats, we're trying to think of good fats as a natural source of fat. So as you said, Tash said, you can go to, you get fats out of that are coming with your animal products.
Yes.
That's a good source of fats.
And nuts is a hybrid.
Yes,
so, yeah.
And then other ones is like your avocados, and very nice source of fats. Coconut oil, a good source of fats.
Butter is protein and
fat. And animal fat. When you cook a roast or something like that, you get all the drippings coming off. That is a great source of fat for the body. Bad fats have come about more from human interventions over time. And these ones are like your vegetable oils and your other oils.
Can we just take a note? It doesn't come from a vegetable. What? And just think about that. You knew that, but you kind of didn't. It's such a good marketing plan. Phil and I are like really good marketers. We love good marketing. vegetable oil is got to be the king of marketing. Like,
Yes.
what a name. Everyone going, it's vegetable oil. It's got to be good for me. It's got the word vegetable in it. It is not good for you. It is really not good for you.
No.
Why is it not good for them?
It comes about from the extraction process.
Can I just, again, side note, I know I'm harping on about this, but it's not like they pressed a carrot and some vegetable oil came out. So it's not vegetables. They didn't press carrots and broccoli together to get some cool oils. There's no oils in that. Vegetable oil is another word for, is it canola? Yeah.
There's different things. You've got canola, you've got rapeseed, you've got
so it's
cotton
seeds.
seed. Yeah, there's
It's seeds and plants that humans have, like, well, not humans. I guess a canola plant exists.
Yes.
Yeah, but yes, as they press out the oil, it changes, doesn't it? Because fats have, to go too technical, there's chemical bonds, isn't there, with the double bonds and the triple bonds, and the trans fat is the bond went a different way. Anyway.
Yeah, and it's basically the extraction process with the chemicals that you use, the whole processing stuff is not good.
Well, just anything processed is not good.
Then what it has a different ratio of what our body likes of we can get into omega-3s and 6s.
Yeah.
And it does not have the good ratio for that. And they're just basically, as we said, this whole heating process. Because as Tash said, the other oils that we also love, and olive oil is great for the body.
Yeah.
We mentioned olive oil and a coconut oil. Now they extract those. The best process you will see on the bottles, if you ever go to the shops, cold pressed.
Yes.
So they're not heating up
and
or anything.
they're in dark bottles because they have to be kept dark, otherwise they
go
change.
off. Yes.
Yeah. But vegetable oil comes in a see-through container.
It does.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
they go, it doesn't change. So olive oil can change. You actually have to be careful cooking with it as well. It's better for on salads because if you cook it too high, the high melting point or whatever changes the chemical structure of the oil and then therefore it's not so good for you. So that's why it's got to be in a cold, dark place and you've got to keep its temperature a certain temperature. Vegetable oil goes, whee! No such problems. Heat me to as high as you want. I don't go off. I don't need to be kept in a dark, cold area, but that's because they've already processed it. They've already played with its chemical structure and it is already now bad for you and it now can't change back. So, chemical lesson for you.
Yeah, there's so much more you can go into and read and the processes of all these things. You know, one thing I would just touch on gently is like these other oils like these cotton seeds and these canola oils, like they have a lot of things in them called like free radicals.
Yes.
If you've ever heard that term. And someone described it at one stage as when you consume it, it's like, think of like a little ball bearings. They're really heavy. And they're kind of shooting through the body, and they knock the healthy cells. You don't want anything knocking. You don't want anything knocking and damaging your healthy cells. So that is a little bit deeper discussion on fats.
Yeah, and for us, bad oils, basically high level, cause inflammation in the body. Inflammation in the body is not good. So we try and steer away from the bad oils and choose the good fats as the fat source to build our hormones and to build our cell walls.
Yeah.
Carbohydrates. So as we said, the body has a lot of stuff to do. It burns a lot of energy, and especially then if you want to get through your day and do a lot of things, you want energy sustainable throughout the day. Now, why carbohydrates got, I think, such a bad rap is because you can have carbohydrates that that break down quite quickly and therefore release a whole dump of glucose into your body. And when you get a whole dump of glucose in your body's like, whee! It like gets like too much energy and it just goes crazy in the bloodstream, and then there's a lull and a dip.
Yeah, well, what happens, the body goes too much glucose in the bloodstream. This is not healthy. This is actually not good for the body. So the body releases something that you may have heard of, insulin. And what happens, that removes the glucose. So you've gone, your body's up here. So if this is the normal level you operate well, you're up here, super energy, insulin released. And then you go down below the line.
And your body, it's not an exact science. So it goes, this is a shitload of glucose, so I'm going to just release a shitload of insulin, and then it normally brings your blood sugar then too low, and it's going to take a while to go back up to normal
hear people
levels.
go, I have a lull in energy after I ate a big meal, or
it's Mars bar, crash. Another Mars bar,
so you're
crash.
kind of like, you're on this kind of cycle.
And I think that's why that's one of the reasons carbohydrates got a bad form. So the carbohydrates you want to choose are the ones that don't dump a whole lot of glucose in. They're slower to digest. So things like Is rice good?
Rice can give a high
okay.
energy, but things.
But you eat it with the protein.
Yeah. Like your fruits, a great example.
Yeah, so we want to choose carbohydrates. So that's why fruit juice, not very good, because all the fibre that actually slows down the digestion and slows down the processing of how the carbohydrate gets released is lost in the fruit juice. So you're going to get a huge spike and then a huge release of insulin and then a lull. But if you eat an apple with the skin, your body can level that out.
Yes.
And then people go, oh, so rice and bread. Yes, if you just eat a piece of bread, not ideal. But if you eat bread with butter and ham and an egg on it, we've got protein now, we've got fats, and we've got carbohydrates. So that's again still lots to digest. So I always think of a jelly bean, a jelly bean is 100% pure glucose. It's the most amazing food in the whole wide world. Completely man-made.
And therefore 100% glucose, 100% carbohydrate, is that saying?
Yeah. And it's just 100% digest. That little shell of the jelly bean's gone, and that is actually in your blood. That's why they use it for hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is, there's not enough glucose. So yes, if that's like one scenario. And on the other side, you've got a sweet potato. It's actually quite, there's a lot of starch that stops the digestion and all that kind of stuff, so it releases the energy really slowly.
Yes.
But all carbohydrates are fine, especially if you're about to go into the gym, you will have a version of a jelly bean. It's not as cool and fun as a jelly bean, it's just a white powder, but it's actually just 100% pure glucose to give yourself that energy. And it's the insulin won't spike because it's literally coming into the blood and being used in a powerful way. But if we go and eat 100 jelly beans and sit on the couch, our body's like, what the hell are we going to do with this?
Yes.
But I just want to mention sugar because people are like, oh, sugar's really bad, really, really bad. And I would beat myself up. Oh my God, I ate sugar. Sugar's so bad for me. But something that made me feel really a lot better about it, so I want to tell you, is this guy, we were talking about the bad oils, and he said he would eat a kilo of sugar any day over a kilo or a litre of bad oil. And he said the inflammation response to eating a kilo of sugar is so much less than the inflammation response of a litre of bad oil. Yeah. And this bad oil, you might go, oh, well, I don't cook with vegetable oil, but do you eat potato chips? Do you go to the fish and chip shop and get chips? Normally, they used to be cooked in lard, now they're cooked in vegetable oil.
If you could find a place that cooked their chips in lard, you're winning.
Yeah. So there's all these things that was probably our biggest thing that changed our behaviour, was really trying to stay away from those oils and not demonising sugar. So we have a rule in our house. It's called JERF.
Yes.
Which is just eat real food.
Got it from someone else who they just talk about, but just eat real food. And what is real food? Real food is what it can come in its most natural process. So think vegetables. So the less that people or humans process food, the healthier it is for you. So vegetables. Pick them out of the garden. You're going to go to the supermarket. There they are. That's good. You
want to be able to, you're shopping with your 3-year-old child, that they can recognise where that came from. So apple came from an apple tree. You know that. But apple sauce, well, the apples had to come from the apple tree and then they had to come in and then get smushed up and then get put into
and probably put with other stuff. So so just eat real food. What is real food? So yes, generally your meats just come from an animal. We can go a lot deeper into the process of what do the animals eat and all those stuff. But for the purpose of this one, what is real food? And often it's actually around the perimeter of a supermarket. They've said, like rice. Rice is a real food. I was going to say,
we're not so that we only eat unprocessed food. So that would be very hard because it's literally saying it's got to be just the fruit and vegetables. So rice comes from a plant, then the plant gets pulled and harvested.
It's like picking a rice kernel, like picking an apple. It's the same kind of thing. So
no, there's another level of processing. Okay, we can agree to disagree. And then something like sourdough bread is another level of processing.
Yes.
But we love sourdough bread, but we try and choose sourdough bread over cooked by a baker when he's actually got the flour that had a level of processing and yeast and whatever else and put it together, then Tip Top Wonder White, which is still not moldy after 2 weeks, still soft, still amazing, whereas your sourdough after 2 days has got a little bit of mold on it, and it's just real. But they've added preservatives and God knows what into the other bread. So we try and choose, and same if I said the applesauce, if it's just apples, if you turn it over and it says 100% apples that have just been smushed, then that's okay, and maybe water.
Yeah, like I like to grab peanut butter for the kids. Who doesn't like a peanut butter, as long as you don't have an allergy to peanuts?
Yes.
But it's amazing. You can look at all the different brands there, and I actually find a particular one there, ingredients on the back, 100% peanuts. I mean, you can find ones which
and that's it.
That's it. There's no, well, when it's 100%, there's nothing else that's 100%.
Yes.
But if something's at 96% peanuts, then you look, it contains, sometimes they put additional vegetable oils in, and some salt and some other things.
And some flavour regulatory acids.
So sometimes you can get things which are very natural, 100% of what they are.
Yeah, so you've got to read the labels. It's the same as the tomato passata. Phil doesn't have time to go and buy fresh tomatoes. Go put them in the boiling pot, boil them down into a sauce. So we go in, I think our passata is 99.9% tomatoes, and I think it's got
0.1% of salt.
Yes,
added.
and you go, well, salt comes from the sea. Salt is actually important in your diet. We don't have a problem with salt. Salt's only a problem if you eat a lot of processed food, because salt's added to everything. But your body actually needs salt to survive as well.
Yeah.
So you've got to read those labels, and you want, you know, like even the kids, we're like, this tomato passata, we can tell you it came from tomatoes.
Yeah.
But tomato sauce, you look at that and it's the sugar.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still not as processed. So should I eat tomato sauce, which is tomato, sugar and salt, as opposed to a biscuit? A processed biscuit in a supermarket, like if you talk about a Tim Tam, there's e-chemicals. E-chemicals are put in to be addictive, so you want to eat 10 or the whole packet. What else is it? There's always vegetable oil in them. There's always like the acidity regulator to, again, make them last for the next 100 years. As opposed to Phil and I, we still love biscuits, but Phil will cook chocolate chip cookies. We know where the flour came from. We know where the sugar came from. We know what else goes into them.
Chocolate.
And normally you can tell from the chocolate it's cacao,
and it can be
sugar.
Eggs and stuff like that. If I am to use an oil, I'll use a coconut oil or an olive oil. But we're getting deeper into the discussion of food now, which I think we might, if you guys like the discussion of food, we can go deeper into more discussions, because I thought for this particular one, if you can leave going, okay, I now understand what a macronutrient is, that's really cool. There's only 3 things that make up basically all real foods. You've got your protein, your fat, and your carbohydrates. You kind of go away with that knowledge now. You're a step ahead of the rest. You can understand. And then any time you're kind of looking at a food, you're like, well, I wonder what the breakup of this is. And then you can start to ask yourself those questions, which is important to know, because as we said at the start of this discussion, health is everything. And we've got to look after our health, because Tash was getting into the discussion of biscuits, for example, and we now know, we understand diving into this thing, it's like a rabbit hole that never ends with the food. Food now in supermarkets, it's a science. It's a science. It's created and designed in laboratories now of how can we make
addictive,
people
tasty.
want to eat more of this, and they do understand.
Because if you like my food, you'll buy it now for the next 10 years.
Yeah, and then if you kind of eat one and you're left going, I need more, well, they've done their job well. So this is just basically arming you with a few weapons that you can go, okay, I want to nourish and look after my body. I understand what's a real food, and I understand now that all foods are comprised of 1, 2, or of these macros.
Yes. So I think in part 3 we should actually talk about the macro split, like how you have higher protein and I have higher carbohydrates, and we talk about how to split up your macros, how to count your macros, how to weigh your macros, and a little bit deeper into the food, as you said.
Yeah. So I hope you guys have got something to take away
Let
from this.
us know in the comments.
Let us know what you want to know here next time. We're going to we love talking health, sharing. This is the number one thing for us. Without it, we wouldn't be doing here, because we wouldn't have enough health to sit here.
So congratulations to you for listening and thinking that that's important and looking after your own health.
So go check out those macros in the food and see what they are made of. We'll see you next
soon.
time.